Hey guys, it's Sandeep from RevAtlas, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the camera review of the recently announced Realme X50 Pro 5G smartphone. Now before we get started, please do make sure to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications to avoid missing any videos from us in the future. The Realme X50 Pro 5G comes with a quad camera setup at the back that comprises of a primary 64MP 1x1.72" Samsung GW1 sensor with f1.8 aperture. You also get a secondary ultra-wide angle 8MP f2.3 camera, a 2x telephoto camera with 13MP resolution and f2.5 aperture, as well as a 2MP black and white portrait depth sensing camera. Now photos captured are good in terms of the overall color output, and we feel that Realme has done well to change their older saturated looking photos and make it a bit more natural looking. That's not to say that they've completely done away with it, but it still exists and has been reduced to a larger extent and only goes overboard in a few scenarios. Realme did tell us that they actually did stick to the GW1 sensor, considering that they have experience tuning it in the past, and that's the reason why they didn't go for the IMX686, which is also a 64MP camera. So in a way it makes sense, and we can see some of the effects and changes that they have mentioned in this already. The sharpness and detail are good, similar to what you would expect from a 64MP sensor, but it does feel like it can do a bit more. That's probably because it still isn't in its final software stage yet, and it will be receiving updates and improvements by the time of the launch. It doesn't do too well with foliage currently, and it exhibits watercolor effects in such situations. Default photos are captured in 16MP resolution that combines 4 pixels into one and gives a resulting pixel size of 1.6 micron compared to 0.8 micron default. You can however shoot in full 64MP resolution as well without pixel binning, and doing so gives a larger resolution and files that are roughly 3 times in terms of size of the pixel binned images. You don't get much of a benefit from these, as sharpness is more or less the same, if not worse, and often with higher levels of noise. So sticking to 16MP is the wiser choice. In terms of low light performance, it's better to make use of the nightscape mode if you want the best quality possible. Performance is good, but I'm not sure if I would call it flagship grade, and it definitely can use some tweaking here for sure. But what's definitely worth noting and a welcome change is the lack of oversaturating the frame that was a tendency in the nightscape mode on older Realme phones. Nightscape mode reduces the noise, increases the clarity as well, which also gives the apparent feeling of higher sharpness and better detailing. There are two other ways in which you can extract better performance from the Realme X50 Pro 5G in terms of low light scenarios, and the first one is by using the Pro mode. Now in the Pro mode, what you can do is enable a faster shutter speed of 1/8000th of a second in case you're interested, and you can go all the way as slow as 32 seconds in terms of shutter speed. You can even capture raw photos, and this will give you better room to play with, both in terms of low lighting situations and even in terms of well lit situations. In case you don't really want to fiddle with the settings, then you can also make use of the tripod mode, and in this case we actually need a very stable surface or a tripod or something equivalent in order to hold the phone steady, as the shutter speed sometimes goes even beyond the Pro mode's capabilities of 32 seconds, and in many cases we have seen it capture up to 36 seconds in terms of shutter speed, and you get a much better photo overall. So if you're using a tripod or have some stable surface to rest the phone against like we had in this scenario, make use of tripod mode and you'll get much better results. The color science works well across the regular and telephoto cameras, while on the ultra-wide angle camera it's a bit more saturated and a bit more rich in terms of contrast. Not a difference between day and night, but it's still evident that the cameras are different, while it looks like you have more or less zoomed into the photo if you compare the telephoto samples. The telephoto camera captures good photos at 2x zoom. It doesn't have the same level of sharpness and detail as the primary camera, but that's expected and is fine. You can also do good hybrid zoom at 5x, and that makes use of the 2x optical zoom along with some digital zoom and clever processing to get some pretty good shots at that zoom range. The good thing is that the software is also cleverly stabilizing the shot at this focal length to avoid much shakes, and that's really required considering the longer the focal length is, the more pronounced each and every shake becomes, so good job by Realme here. You can also achieve 10x and 20x zoom or anywhere in between that using the zoom slider, but at these levels it's very blotchy and the watercolor effect is very prominent. Performance under low light is decent at 2x, but is not great, but is definitely usable while at 5x, and it becomes a grey area where some people may find it acceptable while others won't. Nightscape mode helps here too, but not to a large extent. Apart from a slightly different output visually, the ultra-wide angle camera does a good job at offering a dramatic perspective and still impressive looking images. It doesn't carry the same level of detail and sharpness as the primary camera, but is still decent, and there are some chromatic aberrations towards the corners of the frame, especially when there's a stark difference in terms of luminance. Low light photos aren't very good with ultra-wide angle camera, as they exhibit high levels of noise and also have blotched details, and using nightscape mode only helps it marginally by reducing the noise, but details are further smoothened and there's just some additional clarity added to it. The ultra-wide-angle camera can also double up as a fairly good macro camera, and in fact is a better solution than having a low-res dedicated macro camera, as this has better resolution, quality, and offers the same close-up coverage as the dedicated macro camera. In terms of portrait mode, the X50 Pro 5G does well in terms of edge detection, the bokeh and overall sharpness, and there isn't a big fall off in terms of sharpness between the regular and bokeh modes on the portion, unlike some earlier Realme devices that we tested, so it seems like Realme is working on improving that here. You can capture portraits with either the primary camera or using the telephoto camera, but the former is better choice due to higher quality unless you really need that extra reach or want to really compress the background. At the front is a 32MP Sony IMX616 sensor with f2.5 aperture and a secondary ultra-wide-angle 8MP f2.2 camera as well. The front-facing camera takes good photos in terms of the overall visual appeal and color palette. Dynamic range is good too, but not great, and the overall image tends to overexpose the highlights a bit while bringing more information from the shadows. There's enough detail, but the sharpness seems to be affected a bit by the processing, which renders it softer than you would expect. Even with beauty mode turned off all the way, it's a bit soft. The field of view is fairly good and even in the regular mode, but the ultra-wide-angle camera helps quite a bit, especially for group or landscape selfies, and the images are punchier in terms of color, and the HDR effect is more aggressive here in comparison to the primary selfie camera. That f2.5 aperture of the primary selfie camera is rather unconventional and pretty unheard of even for a front-facing camera, and especially on a flagship device. I would have expected the f2.5 on the ultra-wide and the f2.2 for the primary, but it's the other way around, and even the EXIF information confirms it. While it really shouldn't affect the performance in good lighting conditions, we were particularly worried in terms of low light conditions. But in reality, it isn't as bad as we would expected. Granted, there's more visible noise for sure, especially in the shadows, but at a glance it isn't as much as what you would expected considering the small aperture. The larger sensor size could be the reason that it allows more light than you would expect and hence performs better, and the ultra-wide-angle camera doesn't perform as well, and there's more noise and less detail in low light, and night mode improves things a bit for both cameras, but again not a huge difference. Now coming to the videos, you can shoot videos with all the three cameras, that is ultra-wide, primary and telephoto, and you can shoot up to 4K 30 or 1080-60 with the primary and telephoto cameras, while the ultra-wide-angle camera only supports 1080p 30. EIS is found only in the 1080p modes for the primary and telephoto cameras, while 4K 30 on the primary and telephoto don't have EIS, and neither does ultra-wide even at 1080-30. I'm not really sure why there isn't an option for 4K 60 or even EIS at 4K 30, as the phone's hardware is definitely powerful enough to handle it with ease. As a result, I would generally opt for 1080p modes to get a more refined look thanks to EIS, and to be honest, the EIS is amazing. It's one of the most stable implementations we have seen and does a great job even when brisk walking. If you're jogging or running, however, you can also make use of the ultra steady mode. The front-facing camera maxes out at 1080p 30, but it does record with EIS. However, there seems to be slight jitter in the videos, which should be ironed out with an update, and here too using the ultra steady mode helps when you're jogging or running or moving very fast. This is a front-facing camera on the Realme X50 Pro, capturing 1080p 30fps video. Let me know what you guys think about the overall sharpness, dynamic range, how well has become my voice in this scenario, and the stabilization as well. Overall, the Realme X50 Pro is definitely the best performer from the Realme camp in terms of camera performance, and it does bring a few welcome changes, especially in terms of the saturation, the low light, portrait mode, etc. But the final verdict would be based on what the device is priced at. If it is priced below 40k rupees, then I think this is a good buy, but anything above that, and then it remains to be seen whether you should buy this just for the cameras or not, or you should be buying it for something else. That's it for this video guys, thanks for watching, see you again in the next one, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.